Hello, Larry Hawkins again from Debrief Room. Today I have a special guest from Galveston County Sheriff's Office. His name is Danny Kitchens. He's a current sergeant for the Galveston County Sheriff's Office on patrol. He was in CID for many years. Today we're going to be talking about a double murder that was from Houston, and the body dump was in the Bolivar Peninsula. Sergeant Kitchens took over that case and worked it for a long time. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of that. It was the Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson murder. So with no further ado, Danny.
All right. Let's first talk a little bit about my history and how I got into law enforcement. I was 28 years old when I first got into law enforcement. Went to the academy in year 2000, back at East Texas, Angelina College. Quickly, my first stint in law enforcement was a deputy constable for about 8 months, which was an unpaid position for me at that time. Then got hired on by Nacogdoches County Sheriff's Office, where I served there 8.5 years on patrol and another year and a half as a CID sergeant. In 2011, I left Nacogdoches County and I came to Galveston County. At the end of 2011, started off in the jail. Worked 6 months in the jail before I went on to patrol in 2012. And in 2013, I was promoted back into Criminal Investigation Division, where I worked there until 2025, which is now where I serve as a sergeant on patrol for the Bolivar Peninsula. So I'm a supervisor over the Bolivar Peninsula at this point.
Okay.
This case, I was fairly new into CID. Like I said, I came in 2013 to CID, and this came out in March of 2014. And this was actually the first homicide I've had with Galveston County where I was the lead detective. So it's kind of one of those things, it's sink or swim. It's a whodunit case, and here you go, buddy. You got it. Most of our cases that are homicide cases, we know who the actor is and we know who the suspect is, and it's a matter of just figuring out why this happened. So they're usually on scene when we get there or somewhere close by. But every now and then we get whodunit cases, which is probably about 30% of the homicides that we get. I was on my way to work the morning of March 7th, 2014, probably about 7:45, coming over 61st Street in Galveston on Broadway when I heard the call come out of two bodies that would appear to be bodies dumped behind Fisherman's Cove store at an abandoned hotel right by a dumpster.
Well, just to let our audience know, the Bolivar Peninsula has become a dumping ground for a lot of homicides from other cities. In fact, the first series number 1 on this show was another body dump on the Bolivar Peninsula. So it's amazing. I think, to my knowledge, there was at least 50 that I'm aware of that were dumped there during my time period. I'm sure there's been a lot more since and a lot more before I came.
And to back that up, kind of give a little bit further description of Bolivar Peninsula. Bolivar Peninsula is kind of an isolated area of Galveston County. There's only 2 ways to get there. The population is very low. There's not a lot of people there. So there's a lot of rural areas where there's nobody around. So it makes for a good dumping ground for anybody who's been murdered or even people that come to the beach to commit suicide. You know, you're right by the water. There's not a lot of people around to see it. So it's an easy ending. But anyways, when I got this call or when I heard it on the radio, I informed dispatch that I was going to be en route to it. I was about to be the on-call detective in 15 more minutes. So instead of letting the guy who'd been on call for that night before, I went ahead and took it for him and let him be free of this burden. But I don't guess anybody's really free of the burden because it was all hands on deck. We got over there. It was a matter of trying to identify who these young people were. When we first saw one young lady laying there at the scene when we got there, we could tell it was a female, but the other one we couldn't tell because the head was wrapped up in a sheet. So we had no idea who these people were. But what we did find was a lot of debris, mail, children's toys, even wood with a blood spatter on it. What was unusual was one piece of that wood that appeared to be almost like a shutter had been taken from the vehicle with a piece of paper wrapped around it, kind of acting as a glove, and laid up against the wall on that abandoned motel right by the trash can. So that was an important piece of evidence and comes into play later that puts us on who our suspect is. But the mail that was at this location come back to a Britney Cosby, and it gave an address of Houcher Street in Houston, which if a lot of people's aware of this area is Third Ward. It's a very high crime rate area. So after we processed the scene there, me and a couple other detectives went to this location at Houcher Street. And lo and behold, the trim around the house and window shutters actually matched what we found at that crime scene. The only person at the house at that time, we made contact with the family. The only person there would have been Brittany's great grandmother. And she's an amputee, so she's 92 years old. She is in a wheelchair and she can barely move around the house. Now, this house, and I describe it, it is a brick frame house, single story. If you're looking at the house, to the left of it is a carport. It looks like just to the right of that carport, what used to be a garage converted into a den. Underneath that carport is a wheelchair ramp that leads into that den area. So when we meet Miss Cosby, we find out this is the great grandmother, Britney Cosby. We describe the people to her that we have found, and she identifies both of them as Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson. So here we're able to gain more information on where Crystal lives, her address, who her parents are, things of that nature. Well, while we're speaking with the great grandmother, a man approaches at the house that we later find is James Larry Cosby. We come to find out that's Brittany's father, and he had just been released from prison October the year before, October 2013.
Okay.
Which may or may not come into play, but it kind of gives you an idea how some people can't make it in the free world. They have to find a way to get back to prison because they don't know how to act.
Institutionalizes.
Very much so. So he puts on a show trying to show that he's shocked, he's scared, what's going on, he's crying, he's throwing a fit. We finally get him calmed down, advise him of everything that went on, try to get some information from them that they had left that morning, they hadn't seen him since. Didn't know what was going on.
Let me interject something on that.
Go ahead.
So when I watched some of the footage that you provided for me, the first thing I noticed when he walked in that door is he was very animated.
Extremely.
Acting. He was visibly upset, but there was no emotion to it. It was just
right. No fear.
Running around crazy. So it immediately, and you're a seasoned detective, so I'm sure you picked up on it. And I was like, this guy's not telling the truth already. So it was interesting to see that he turned out to be the suspect. Because,
right.
I'm sure you and the other folks that were there picked up on him pretty quick.
Well, unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't as seasoned as I am now. And I didn't have the training experience then that I have now. So I didn't pick up on it right away. And now looking back, there were a lot of signs that he showed that had I been more seasoned at that time, that I could have scratched my head and dug into a little bit.
You were also having to question.
Absolutely.
So you're not really doing like me in the audience sitting back studying this guy. You're having to do your question and writing everything down and doing an investigation. So that kind of took your eyes off of the ball there for a second.
And after speaking with them, of course, I didn't pick up on it right away. And it's kind of interesting. The more I explain this, you'll see it come together. We left there and went and spoke with Crystal's father. He pulled up about the time that we got to the house and we spoke with him. He was visibly upset. I could tell he was hurt. He made the comment that he had told his daughter that something bad was going to happen if he didn't get away from that girl. Now, understanding that Mr. Jackson, Ivan Jackson, who's now a very dear friend of mine, is a Baptist minister, and he didn't believe in the relationship that the two girls had together, because a lot of people hypothesized that them being lesbian is the reason they were murdered. No, I don't believe that. I don't think that has anything to do with it. However, because of his anger towards the relationship, we had to look at him as a suspect.
Yeah.
And the only firearm he had, he provided for us. We took it, confiscated it.
He
Did
provided it that day.
I don't remember if it was that day. I want to say it was, but I don't remember. But the caliber of that gun, after we did all the forensics, was not big enough to have done the damage of what happened to Crystal. So we ruled that out. Eventually, after so many interviews with him and his wife, we completely ruled them out as suspects altogether. The following Sunday, myself and God rest his soul, Greg Hayes and I went to do a more thorough interview with Mr. Cosby, and we took him to the McCalla station in Houston. I didn't pick up on it then, but he was extremely, extremely nervous before we went inside. He wanted to stay out and smoke a cigarette. We allowed him to stay out and smoke a cigarette. Then went inside and carried on this interview with him. Well, as we're doing the interview, it's kind of like he looking at a blank slate. I mean, he kind of had 1,000-yard stare. When we asked questions, we almost had to lead him into answers because he was just, it's almost like he was checked out. He just wasn't there. So we finished that, took him back home. And of course, we followed other leads to, other suspects. Was it a jealous boyfriend? Crystal had a child with a man. Was he jealous? Did this happen? Because we could tell, and going back to the scene.
If you would describe that scene to the audience, of course, we're going to have photos of
Sure,
it, but
sure.
describe that building itself, what that building was and how abandoned that area is, how desolate it is.
That building is, like I said, it was an old motel. There's no doors, no windows on it. I mean, it's been abandoned for years. You got raccoons and every other kind of rodent you can think living in and out of that building. But it's right behind the store, which where the dumpster in the building is kind of hidden because the store's in front of it, right on the edge of 87. There's no houses around for several hundred yards. I mean, it's pretty good ways away from any kind of civilization. So
That's what, about 1.5 miles from the ferry landing?
Maybe, probably so, if that far. But dumped at the time of night it was dumped, there's no lights. It's very, very low lit. And there's no visibility there other than just yourself and your headlights.
Yeah.
So, but in the ground where they were dumped at, it's all concrete parking lot. There was no dirt, nothing there. The small county road runs right beside the parking lot. You might have 30 yards between the road and the door to the buildings. So it's a very small desolate place. Fort Travis actually sits right behind it.
Ironically, when I was on patrol over there, I would sit there in that parking lot and do a lot of my reports just because of the light from the store if I was over there at night. So,
well, ironically, there's video from the store of an officer driving through the parking lot of the store and making a turnaround and going back that night.
Well, this was a record. I wasn't there then. So,
yeah.
Wasn't me.
No. Where were we? Oh, the interview. Okay. So we're interviewing all these people. We've ruled out numerous different people. We even had a suspect sketch drawn up from the ferry guard who actually spoke with the suspect at that time, which did not match a suspect at all. And I could see that for him because how many people does he come into contact with while he's working his shift? So the following Wednesday, myself and Lieutenant Hatcher are on our way to Houston. We're going to interview another person who may have some information at Houston Police Department. Eventually that washes out. He doesn't have any info on that at all. On our way to that interview, I get a call from Investigator William Kilburn. And he asked me, he said, Danny, who is James Cosby? Because William doesn't know anything about James Cosby. He doesn't do the interviews, nothing. So who's James Cosby? I said, well, that's Britney's father. Why are you asking? Well, we pulled his print off that piece of paper that was around that shutter. So that's about the time I told Tommy, Mr. Hanson, I said, when we finish this, when you go back to the house. So right away, let's go back to the house. I said, we got a suspect. So we did our interview in Houston. We're back to the house. Where we went back to the house, there was a caretaker there with the grandmother at that time. There were the only two people there. Caretaker happened to be a family member named Cora Day, I believe was her name. So we asked to speak with her outside, away from the grandmother, just kind of get some information. What we did, we took her underneath the carport because it just started to rain. And when we took her under the carport, she looked around. She said, "Something's wrong here." So what's wrong? Well, the carport's clean. It's never clean. They're normally leaving stuff laying around, debris laying around everywhere, but there's nothing here. But I remember back when I went to the house before and I spoke with family members there, at the end of the wheelchair ramp was a couple little bricks kind of sitting off to the side. And I didn't think about it then, but when she started saying that, I said, "Well, this don't make sense. If it's clean under here, why are these bricks sitting here?" So I go move the bricks away from the wheelchair ramp and I find like 3 or 4 drops of blood.
Wow.
And I tell Lieutenant Hanson, I said, "Hey, come here." So he comes over. I said, "Look," I said, "I think this is it." So he starts looking up closer to the door, and is where he starts seeing blood spatter and drag or spear marks on the door frame. And when I see this, I call William Kilburn, who they're on their way to look for evidence at another location because where we found a wallet at, which is kind of related, but not really. I think where they found the wallet at is where he would have dumped the bodies if he hadn't been followed over there. But I called William Kilburn. I said, "William, where you at?" He said, "Well, we're on our way to this field with the four-wheelers." I said, "Get over here. Get over here now." I said, "Well, I think we're standing in our crime scene." Fortunately, I had done a search warrant for that house the day before. I had not served it yet. So
Worked out good.
bingo. We got the search warrant. We got the house. We got the crime scene. Let's serve this one.
So if you would not have moved those bricks, that might not have happened.
Correct.
Wow.
We may have never found it.
It's something that young investigators watching this, even veterans, you think, well, I've done this a million times. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah.
And then you move a brick.
And bingo, there it is. But, I don't know where everybody's at as far as their religious beliefs, but I prayed and prayed and prayed that we get a lead. That we got some I said, "Lord, give me something for these families. Give me something." And that's when I found that blood.
Wow.
So we served the search warrant that night, and we go in and to this bedroom. And let me set up the setting for this bedroom. This is where James Cosby lived at when he was in that house. See, that den was his. He had a sheet across the front of the den to where nobody could see in there. The 2 girls had 2 bedrooms on the other side of the house, and nobody was allowed in his den. That's kind of his private sanctuary. When we go into this den, we start seeing huge stains all over the carpet, and what it turns out to be is blood stains. I mean, just big, probably 12, 18 inches around. And not only that, we see rugs in certain areas throughout that room that when you remove them, you see blood on the bottom of the rugs and on the carpet that's in the house. So he took these rugs and placed them on top of these stains. And one of them happened to be what appeared to be a prayer rug because it had the writing on the back of the rug. So he's practicing Muslim. Also, there was a broken lamp in that room that you could tell was a fresh break. There was no rust or nothing to it. But the closer you examine this lamp, the more you start seeing blood spatter on the lamp and on the chair that it's sitting next to, his shoes. I mean, it was just all over the place.
Wow.
So we processed that scene, sprayed it with what's called Blue Star, which works a lot like luminol. Now, I don't really know the difference, but when we did the Blue Star, the room just lit up. I mean, like a Christmas tree, blue lights all over that room.
So you are there in the daytime or nighttime?
We were there both.
And then that's another thing for our audience to know. We're in
Hours.
most of the movies, it has to be dark and there's
Yes.
nighttime. Then that's just not true.
Nighttime is actually
illuminate.
nighttime is actually when we did the Blue Star because you could see it a lot better.
Oh, okay.
But we were there that long. I mean, for hours and hours.
But you can see it in the daytime as well.
Yeah. You see it in the daytime, but it's better to see it at night, especially when you're doing your photographs. And it only stays blue for so long, so you have to get your camera set up and get it pretty quick. So we took that room apart. We took the chair. We took the lamp. We tore the carpet, cut the carpet. We took everything that had blood on it. We took it back with us. I think by the end of this case, we had over 380 pieces of evidence, which is what William told me that it's the most evidence he's ever collected in any case.
That's a lot. That's a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
You almost have your section of the evidence report.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, when you think about his mindset, he obviously thought he did such a good job that he didn't need to do anything to the crime scene except wash it down,
Or just, cover it up or wash it down.
not dispose of the carpet, not anything that would attract attention or a rug over it.
Yeah.
Nobody will know.
Exactly. Well, interesting enough, in processing that scene, we found another sheet that matched the sheet that was over her head. So, I mean, even the number on the tag, the batch number matched. And Investigator Kilburn called that company to find out that those were actually matching sheets.
So it's like a lot number.
Yes.
And so that shows that they came in the same package.
Came in the same package.
Wow. Good check work right there.
Yep. And during the autopsy, royal blue fibers were found on Britney and in her hair. Well, also in that room was a royal blue blanket for those loose fibers. So that everything there matched up. In processing the blood, all that blood come back to Britney. None of it come back to Crystal. It all come back to Britney.
So now we know Crystal was killed somewhere else.
Right. And keeping in mind, let's go back to their injuries a little bit and go back to the original crime scene. And I forgot to mention earlier, but one of the things, and I've learned this just from listening to other people, but Brittany's head was wrapped up with that sheet. And that is common with people who are ashamed of something that they did, especially when it's a loved one or something to that effect. They don't want to see what they did. And he beat her to death. The first blow broke her skull and broke her neck, and it killed her instantly. And he beat her about 4 more times with whatever instrument it was he beat her with. So he killed her immediately.
This is her biological dad.
This is her biological father. Now, he never raised her because he spent his life in prison. Her great-grandmother is actually the one who raised her. So for 24 years, it's been great-grandmother doing it. And I'll hypothesize at the end of this to tell you what I think happened.
Sure.
But we got that processed. While we're processing this scene, I get 2 of my other partners and I said, "Hey, Mr. Cosby's at a vigil tonight." I said, "Why don't you 2 go get him? Tell him we've come up with more information. Let's get him back down to the office and let's interrogate him." I said, "He's our suspect. Let's start getting this done." So we get back to the office. I don't even remember what time, at 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we do a 5.5-hour interrogation on him. Where there's many times I thought he was going to break just by watching his body posture and his mannerisms. I thought he was going to break. And again, going back to, if I had more experience at the time, I would have paid attention a little bit closer to the way he said things, because the way he said them, he was actually telling me I did it.
He didn't want to admit it, but
he did not want to.
It's almost what you said in the first place. He was institutionalized, and maybe part of him wanted to go back.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he just did such a poor job being a convict.
Yeah,
and doing such a poor job of covering yourself. It's just kind of rare.
Absolutely, But we had enough there that we went ahead and placed him in custody for tampering with evidence, altering a corpse, ×2, which gave us a $500,000 bond on him.
Okay.
But even though he's arrested, like I explained to many people, especially young detectives, once the arrest is made, the job is not over. You still have to investigate the case. In doing so, and I don't want to give too much information out because I hope bad guys don't watch this and get info.
That's about making sure from these types of interviews.
But phone records played a huge key part. And I'm not going to go into details on what part it played, but it put us exactly where we needed to be at the right times. I'll just say that and we'll leave it at that. And further building this case up, we were able to locate a girlfriend. And I don't even remember exactly how we come across her. But she confirmed that morning she saw James Cosby drive out of the roadway that he lives on in the girl's vehicle. The girls had just bought this vehicle like 5 days before. Had good jobs. Both of them went together and bought them a brand new vehicle. It's a used vehicle, but new to them. Well, she saw him drive out of that road in that vehicle. She turned and followed. where he went to an open field, and she followed and got stuck. So he turned around, picked her up, and this vehicle that he's in is a Kia Sorento. It's a little SUV, and on the back, you have, behind the seat, you have a cover that you can pull over, towards the back of the tailgate to where anything underneath can't be seen.
Yeah.
So he picked her up, and they left. She hung out with him for the day until he had to take her back to a women's shelter in South Houston, somewhere, Pasadena, South Houston. And at that point, I think is when he went back home, got Britney's body, and disposed of both of the bodies. Because she claimed that later that night, he called her to come pick him up at Whataburger, which is right next to the Ritz Club off of 45 South in Houston. Well, the Ritz Club is where the vehicle was found about a month later. The owner finally called it in as an abandoned vehicle. We were able to recover the vehicle. So we had it listed as a stolen vehicle. It was in TCIC and NCIC stolen.
Wow.
So we got it back. We processed it. There was only blood around the frame of the back liftgate. No blood anywhere else. We did find a bullet in the back seat, in the back of the back seat, right behind where the little girl was sitting. My mom put her in the vehicle to go to school that morning.
That was a spent round or?
Spent round.
Wow.
So we got it all back, got it processed. The day after I interrogated Mr. Cosby, we interviewed Crystal's little girl, who was 5 years old at the time. She gave us the timeline. We did not have the timeline right the night before. Had we had that timeline correct, I believe I could have got him to confess.
Yeah.
But he knew, because of what we were saying, that we didn't know everything. And I think that is what held him back. But that was the closest time we could get to get the little girl in front of the forensic interviewer to get her interviewed at the Child Advocacy Center. But she gave us the timeline. And fortunately, the more and more that we investigated this case, we were able to bring enough before the grand jury that we were able to get him indicted on capital murder. And then, after it went to court, we, of course, got our conviction of capital murder, which was later upheld by the appeals court. So he's in prison for life. Now, my hypothesis, or my theory of what happened, and it's funny because when I tell you this theory, I'm going to tell you what happened after that. My theory is that when Crystal put her little girl in the car, because she's backed in under the carport just outside that door where the wheelchair ramp is, my theory is while she was putting that child in the car, dad and daughter got into an altercation in the house, and he snapped and beat her to death. Crystal come back in the house from the front door, saw what was going on, and took off running outside the door underneath that carport. And he followed her out and shot her at the back of the vehicle. So when he was leaving the house that morning, when the girlfriend saw him, it's my belief Crystal was in that vehicle at that time. But the little girl, before he took that vehicle out, the little girl had gotten out and gone back inside through the front door. And one time he told the little girl, Mom and Britney walked to work. They left him in the vehicle there and they walked to work. In her interview, she reports hearing the man, she called him the bad guy, behind her. So she heard a lot of commotion, a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. And later on, come back and said she heard the gunshots.
So was Grandma home when the gunshot happened as well?
Grandma was home. Grandma
didn't hear the beating or the gunshot?
She can't hear worth the crap. I mean, she just cannot hear. We had a hard time talking to her because her hearing so bad.
So she was in the other room, approximately how many feet away would you say?
Probably,
where
the beating was going on, she was probably 10, 15 feet away on the other side of walls. So,
I can tell you, it's probably safe to say if she'd have walked in on that, he'd probably
would have killed her too.
Just keep his ass out of jail.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because when I came up with that theory on the TV show, he was watching the show in the cell. And one of the deputies in there heard him say, yeah, that's pretty much right. Well, see, and we'll go back and let's talk about Crystal and Britney. They had, both of them had good jobs. They were eating out all the time, just bought this new car. He had nothing. He's eating bologna sandwiches, and Crystal was pretty much taking care of everything around the house. And I think Crystal might have been rubbing it in a little bit. And jealousy hit. And the reason I say that and why I've come up with that theory is because through this investigation, I was reading old police reports of Houston PD where he'd been dealt with in the past. And one of them, he beat his ex-wife almost to death. And when the description of that report, watching what that lady described, is exactly what I felt like he did to Britney. Only he didn't kill his ex-wife, he killed his daughter.
So let's back up to that part. When you started interviewing friends, family, did he have a history of beating on his kids growing up? I know he's gone to prison most of the time, but when he would be home, or the ex-wife, Brittany's mom, no history of that at all.
Just through those reports is where we saw the history at. Nothing with the kids, because he, like I said, he didn't raise a kid. He had nothing to do with them. And Brittany was his only child that he knew of or that we know of. But there's a couple of assault reports with the Houston PD, plus that ag assault where he almost beat his wife to death. But I will say that while interviewing family members, he had two cousins that the whole time that we were interviewing, they're telling me that we knew he did it. He had to have done it. He actually came to one of the cousins a week before that and asked him about helping him what he called hit a lick. So I don't know if it's a robbery, if it's a murder, or what it was. I don't think this was planned. I think that was about something totally different. I think this was a spur of the moment reaction.
Passion.
Yes.
And then when he realized what he'd done, he had to finish.
Right. I don't think it was planned to do that to her. I think he had something else in mind. But both of those cousins told me they knew he did it. So when it got to the point that we went to court, we got to conviction, when they read out that verdict, it was a very, very emotional time. I mean, it brought me to tears. I mean, it really did,
Sure.
because I want to make sure that we did everything right for those families. We had to do it right.
Wow. That's a hell of a case.
It really was.
So from beginning to the very end, what was your time span?
Probably about 3 years. I want to say it happened in 14. I think we completed to the verdict being read was 2017.
So another reason why I do the show is because people just do not realize, that story was on the news for when it got solved and when the body was first found, but they don't realize that the time period between that body being found and somebody going to jail, that's 3 years. They don't think about, and again, that's why I do this show for detectives only, because people do not realize how much work, how many hours go into an investigation, and then it goes cold and you have to wait on somebody to call you, or you wait on evidence that's been sent off to University of North Texas or DPS, and you wait on that evidence to get just a little smidgen that gives you one more thing to follow up on.
Absolutely.
And then, so
it's a hurry up wait game for a lot of it. Hurry up, get this done, and then we wait on the results.
Yeah, people bringing that to light for our audience is a very important thing to me, that detectives get recognized for all the hard work that they do and how painstaking it is, how psychologically debilitating it be as well. We're all fathers. Most detectives I know are fathers. And so when you find a young child like that, well, she was an adult, but she's still young. I've got kids a lot older than her. And it psychologically screws with you. But it also gives you that motivation, like you said, you're praying about it. You're wanting to solve this case. And so between your prayers to God and a lot of good forensic work done by Kilburn and the interviews that you and Tommy did, it got you to where you wanted to be. And I commend you for that, because it's, not all cases turn out like that.
No, they absolutely don't. I mean, and that's why you got so many unsolved, because sometimes you can't find the person who done it.
Yeah.
And I don't take credit for this case. I mean, it was 100% a team effort.
Yeah.
Not one person was the sole successful person. We were all successful on it, and everybody worked their butts off, and that's what it means. You can tell me, great job all day long, but man, it goes out to everybody that worked that case, because everybody needs to be recognized for it.
I've said that on every case I work, because it's the forensics, it's the interview, it's a lot of people will sit in a room and listen to people talk, but they're not actively listening.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of like, yeah, let's get through this. I got another one to do. I've got stuff going in a home. So the attention span in the interview is probably one of the most important things you can have, because you just might miss that one little thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've worked several cold cases. I've been involved in 3 that actually got solved, and it's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those cases, Rachel Cook case being one of them, you had no crime scene, you had no witnesses, and 24 years later, we're still here trying to figure out what happened. So,
Hey, we may never, it just,
yeah, it's
with new technology as it comes around, it's like I was explaining to people today, we were talking about, cold cases getting solved. I said, and some of the technology exists today did not exist back then. That we can now go back and re-examine this stuff, and it's led us to a suspect now. So it's a different ballgame. I really enjoy it. I wish I'd had the experience and knowledge on this case that I have today, because I can recognize things a little more than what I did back then. When I'm trying to hurry up, get an answer, I've learned to shut up and listen and pay attention instead of trying to talk too much in interviews. And
this question. This question.
No, this is what you did. No, just shut up and listen. He's going to tell you if you be quiet. If they're willing to talk, let them talk.
Especially when it's a relative.
Absolutely.
They actually want you to know. They just don't want to just lay it out there on the platter for you.
Absolutely.
They want you to
And not only going back to how long it takes these cases, and I've got another one we'll be able to talk about eventually too, that I got in 21, April of 21, and we just closed it out about 2 months ago.
Wow.
Got convictions on 3 suspects.
Yeah, as Lieutenant Henson always said, it's not always a cold case. Sometimes they're just cool.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there cooling. They're not
Absolutely.
And 5 years for that one?
Yep.
3 years for this other one. It's a lot of patience. And then if being a detective doesn't teach you anything, it'll teach you patience. Because if you're wanting to go in there and get it solved the first day, like the show 48 Hours, that's rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Because even when you have eyewitnesses, each eyewitness will tell you something different.
Absolutely, because their perspective is different.
That's correct.
Just like this guy with the red shirt. Well, no, he had a blue shirt. Well, your perspective has a lot to do with that. So look for those common characteristics. Another thing, and a great piece of advice, and that I see with the new generation of detectives that come along, and if I could, best piece of advice I could give is don't get tunnel vision. Because if you get tunnel vision, you're going to miss the other stuff out here that's really telling you what's going on.
That's correct. We had a case where we recanvassed the area 5 times. On the 5th time, we found a guy who had never been interviewed. He was gone every time to work. So when we were recanvassed, we went in the PM hours when everybody would be home. And sure enough, we found a guy who had seen several things that helped us get that case solved.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's fun. I enjoy it. Those are the cases I enjoy.
Yeah. It's the challenge. There's the downside to it. After a long time, you were talking about your inexperience. When you're doing a case like that, there's this place that you are. When you're a new detective, you have fresh eyes. And what you said is true. You want to get it done. You want to make that. You want to make that your first case, and you really want it to go. And then it turns into 3 years. But when you're in that middle parts where you're really seasoned and learning things, still you're still going to schools, and you're still talking to people, other detectives about the way they do things. One more thing for your toolbox, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the part where I was when I retired. I was pretty burnt out. And I promise you, there's things that I probably missed in some of my investigations because of the burnout. You have all that knowledge up here, but
You can't really apply it.
yeah, you're hurrying through like you would
Right.
as a rookie. So the point I'm trying to make is that middle space is the best time to be in CID. Once you get to that point to where you're feeling burnt out, let the young guys take it. Let the
100%.
guys that are in that medium range take the case because they're going to try harder than you would.
Well, and that's why I like where I'm at now, you know, as a patrol sergeant, because like I told you before, I needed a break from that monotony. I've been doing it for 12 years up there and it's the same old thing, in and out, in and out, in and out. And you get to where I just want to go home at the end of the day. Don't worry about nothing, not think about nothing. And when you get to that point, then you need something to break it up. You got to do something different. You know, it's not saying I won't go back to it, you know, but for now, I needed something to break it up. And now we got the new kids in there and they're the ones on fire and eager to learn and eager to get this stuff done. And
hopefully they'll come to you for advice. And
I hope so. But
pride.
another great thing about being in there and going back is I can take now some of the things that I've learned and teach these guys out here. Hey, he's telling you on this traffic stop right now what's going on, but you got to stop and you got to listen.
Yeah.
And watch what he's doing.
Well, you got anything else for me on this case?
Man, that's good. That's pretty much it. It was a long, drawn out process, but really satisfying to come to the end that we got and the fact that we could have some closure for those families.
Well, great job for all of you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the interview.
You bet.